Most men were never taught how powerful their words really are, so they text, hoping, waiting, overthinking every reply. And each time she goes quiet, they blame themselves, wondering what they did wrong. But what if the problem was never you, only the way you were taught to communicate? What if one small shift could change how you're seen, felt, and remembered? This isn't about tricks or games. It's about finally understanding the emotional language that creates connection instead of distance. Stay with me until the end, because the way you text after this will never be the same again. Comment your location and where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel for life-changing insights you were never taught. Most men text from a place they don't even realize they're in, a quiet need for validation. It shows up subtly. A message that asks instead of states. A tone that waits for permission. A sentence padded with explanations so it won't be misunderstood. Psychologically, this comes from uncertainty about one's own value. When you don't feel grounded internally, you try to secure your worth externally. And texting becomes the fastest way to do that. The problem is, the moment a message is sent to get something, attention, reassurance, certainty, it communicates lack before it communicates interest. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men avoid. Attraction is not built by proving you're enough. It's built by knowing you are. When a man texts to seek validation, he hands emotional control to the other person. His mood rises or falls based on replies, timing, emojis, silence. That dynamic is felt instantly. Even if the words look fine on the screen, the emotional posture behind them leaks through. Humans are remarkably sensitive to intent. We don't just read messages, we feel the energy beneath them. The right way to text begins with a philosophical shift. You stop seeing texting as a tool to secure outcomes and start using it as a medium of expression. Expression says, "This is who I am, this is what I feel, and I'm at peace whether it's received or not." That doesn't mean being cold or detached, it means being rooted. You're not auditioning, you're communicating from self-respect. This is why confident texts often look simpler, fewer words, less justification, more clarity, not because the man doesn't care, but because he doesn't fear being misunderstood. Psychologically, this shift does something powerful. It reverses the polarity of the interaction. Instead of chasing emotional certainty, you create emotional presence. Presence invites curiosity. Curiosity invites engagement. When your text isn't asking for approval, it gives the other person space to lean in. And leaning in is where attraction lives. This is why a calm, intentional message often outperforms a perfectly crafted one. Authentic intent is more compelling than clever phrasing. Philosophically, this is about agency. Reactive men let circumstances dictate their emotional state. Intentional men decide how they show up regardless of response. When you text with intent, you're not trying to control how someone feels about you. You're allowing them the freedom to respond honestly. Ironically, that freedom makes connection more likely, not less. People trust those who aren't trying to manage their reactions. So before you ever send another message, pause and ask yourself one question. Not, will this make her reply? But, is this aligned with who I am when I respect myself? That single question recalibrates everything. Because when your words come from wholeness instead of hunger, they carry weight. And here's the reflection to leave you with: the quality of your communication will never exceed the quality of your self-relationship. Change where you're texting from, and the results will change on their own. Most men believe the purpose of texting is to entertain. So they perform, they stack jokes, send long stories, explain themselves in detail, and try to be endlessly interesting. On the surface, this seems logical. After all, attention feels like the currency of attraction. But psychologically, this approach creates the opposite effect. When you try to entertain, you place yourself in the role of a performer and the other person in the role of a judge. You're no longer connecting, you're auditioning. And the moment someone feels evaluated, emotional depth disappears. Human beings don't bond through stimulation, they bond through emotion. Entertainment is temporary, emotion is memorable. Think about the conversations you remember years later. They weren't the funniest or the most impressive. They were the ones that made you feel understood, curious, safe, or deeply seen. Emotion is what gives meaning to interaction. Without it, communication becomes noise, pleasant perhaps, but forgettable. The mistake most men make is confusing intensity with connection. Rapid replies, constant messaging, high energy. It feels like momentum, but it often overwhelms the emotional system. The brain needs space to interpret meaning. Emotion needs pauses to form. When you fill every silence, you eliminate anticipation. And anticipation is one of the most powerful psychological drivers of attraction. Silence, when grounded in confidence, is not absence, it's invitation. The right way to text is to create emotional pacing. This means letting messages breathe. It means understanding that less can carry more. A grounded statement delivered calmly can evoke more feeling than a paragraph trying to impress. Emotion emerges not from volume, but from resonance. When your words align with your internal state, they land differently. They feel real. And real always stands out in a world of constant stimulation. There's also a deeper philosophical layer here. When you try to entertain, you're focused outward, monitoring reactions, adjusting tone, chasing engagement. When you focus on emotion, you're anchored inward. You speak from awareness, not anxiety. That shift alone changes how your messages are perceived. Emotional maturity is attractive because it signals safety. It tells the other person, you don't have to perform here. You can just be. This is why short, intentional texts often create more attachment than long, energetic ones. They leave room for interpretation. They invite participation. Instead of consuming content, the other person begins co-creating the interaction. And co-creation is the foundation of emotional investment. People value what they help build. So the next time you're tempted to entertain, pause. Ask yourself whether you're trying to hold attention or evoke feeling. One creates dependence, the other creates desire. One is exhausting, the other is magnetic. And here's the reflection to carry with you. Attraction isn't about being more interesting, it's about being more present. When you allow emotion to lead instead of performance, connection stops feeling forced and starts feeling inevitable. Most men don't realize how reactive they become once emotions are involved. A delayed reply triggers overthinking. A short message feels like rejection. Silence feels personal. And without noticing, they begin adjusting, double texting, softening their tone, apologizing for things they never did. Psychologically, this is the mind searching for safety. When uncertainty appears, the instinct is to regain control. But in communication, control doesn't create security, consistency does. Reactive texting places your emotional state in someone else's hands. Your confidence rises when they respond and collapses when they don't. That imbalance is felt immediately. Even without intention, it communicates instability. Leadership, in contrast, is emotional self-regulation. It's the ability to remain grounded regardless of external feedback. When you lead the interaction, you're not forcing outcomes. You're holding a steady emotional frame others can relax into. Leading through texting doesn't mean dominating the conversation or withholding warmth. It means setting the tone through calm clarity. You don't rush to fill silence because you understand that silence is not a threat. It's neutral space. You don't chase momentum because you trust it will return naturally when the connection is real. This posture signals abundance, not scarcity. And abundance is one of the clearest markers of psychological confidence. Philosophically, leadership is about authorship. Reactive people let circumstances write their emotional script. Intentional people choose their response. When you text from leadership, your messages aren't shaped by fear of loss, but by alignment with who you are. You respond when it makes sense, not when anxiety demands it. You remain kind without becoming compliant, firm without becoming cold, present without being attached to outcome. This is why leadership creates safety. People are drawn to those who are emotionally predictable, not in behavior, but in stability. They know where they stand. They feel no pressure to manage your emotions. That freedom allows attraction to deepen organically. When someone senses that your world continues with or without their immediate attention, they're more likely to lean in, not pull away. So the practice here is simple, but not easy. Slow down. Before you reply, check your intention. Are you responding from clarity or from urgency? From choice or from fear? That moment of awareness is where leadership begins. And here's the closing reflection to sit with. The strongest signal you can send is not how quickly you respond, but how solid you remain. When you lead yourself, others naturally follow.